Written during the 19th century, Briar Rose, a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, tells the story of a young princess, cursed to fall into a deep slumber. In a magical kingdom, a king and queen were blessed with a daughter after the queen saved a magical fish. The king and queen held a festival, but invited only 12 out of the 13 fairies. The 13th fairy was furious and cursed the daughter to die when she pricked her finger on a spindle. The 12th fairy intervened, changing the curse so that the girl would instead fall into a deep, eternal slumber. To protect the princess, the king burned all the spindle in the kingdom. However, at the age of 15, the curious princess fulfilled the prophecy by pricking her finger with the needle and causing the entire castle to fall into a deep sleep. Many years later, a young prince lifted the curse by kissing the princess, and then they lived happily ever after. The Brothers Grimm illustrate the traditional roles of women during the 19th century through the symbols of a rose and a spindle, reinforcing the confined societal standards and cultural values placed on women. Many upper and middle class women were expected to get married and take care of their children and other domestic duties. The Brothers Grimm addressed the societal roles of women during the 19th century by immediately cursing Briar Rose upon her birth, implying that women were forced into their societal roles from the moment they were born. The fairies gifted the child with characteristics of the ideal woman, such as beauty and grace, highlighting the societal standards expected of a young, noble woman. However, the uninvited 13th fairy, feeling left out, was filled with anger and scolded the king and queen very much, crying out that the king's daughter shall, in her 15th year, be wounded by a spindle and fall down dead. The 13th fairy symbolizes women who exist outside societal norms, as her attire, a black broom, black shoes, and cap, reflects her disruptive and malevolent nature. Her power stems from resentment and anger rather than nurturing qualities of a woman. However, her resentment arises from the king and queen's exclusion, illustrating the marginalization of women who do not adhere to social expectations. In contrast, the other 12 fairies symbolize traditional femininity by gifting the princess with roles that align with societal ideals. Briar Rose's beauty and the gifts she receives are portrayed as essential for her to be saved, as the prince falls in love with her beauty and grace at first sight. These gifts suggest that her existence and worth are validated only when she follows societal expectations. After receiving news of his daughter's misfortune, the king ordered the kingdom to burn all the spindles, hoping to protect and save his daughter from her ill fate. This foreshadows the princess's inevitable interaction with the spindle, fulfilling this prophecy. When the princess encounters the old lady, she is intrigued by how the pretty little thing, the spindle, turns round, and though she scarcely touched the needle, she falls into a deep slumber. The spindle, a sewing needle, symbolizes the traditional task women were expected to fulfill while taking care of other domestic duties. When women felt tempted to freedom or something outside of societal norms, they often faced consequences to express themselves. Like her 100-year curse, the traditional role felt constricting, symbolizing a cycle of passivity and dependency on the man. The Brother Grimms continued to portray a woman's role by signifying the princess's name, Briar Rose. The meaning of the word briar means a thorn on a rose, while rose symbolizes love and beauty. Her name was symbolized when the prince came to save her from her slumber. When the prince came to the castle, instead of seeing a large hedge of thorns like the other princes, he saw beautiful flowering shrubs. Compared to the other men who tried to save Briar Rose, the prince was able to overcome the shrubs, which serves him to be the right man for Briar Rose, implying that they are fated to each other. This signifies the view of masculinity during the 19th century, as a man's worthiness is based on his ability to overcome obstacles. The large hedge of thorns symbolizes the importance of purity, as she should protect it. A woman's worth was also dependent on her virginity. His first initial thought when he looked at her was that she looked so beautiful at this very moment, and he was so struck by her beauty that he could not take his eyes off of her. Instead of understanding Briar Rose as a human being, he was enchanted by her beauty, suggesting that society values beauty over the emotional connection between two people. Additionally, the Brothers Grimm describe her as an object which parallels to a rose. Her beauty captivates the prince's thoughts. After the prince falls in love with the sleeping beauty, he stooped down and gave her the kiss. But the moment he kissed her, she opened her eyes and awoke, and smiled upon him. The kiss between the two new lovers reflects the birth of Briar Rose. The prince does not ask for permission to kiss the princess. Instead, he assumes that the kiss will be welcome and break the curse. Her curse was dependent on a male's intervention, which illustrates how men hold power in controlling a woman's life. The Brothers Grimm's symbolization of the rose, the spindle, and the fairies illustrate the ideal traits of 19th century women, highlighting how their worth was defined by beauty, purity, and grace. By emphasizing the gifts Briar Rose was given, Briar Rose highlights a woman's value which was determined by her external appearance rather than her inner qualities. The blessing the 12 fairies gifted functioned as a subtle curse, reinforcing societal expectations and suggesting that a woman's worth was validated only through male approval. The spindle and princess kiss further reflects the restrictive roles women faced during this time. Their identities were often confined to their home life and their relationship with their husband. Briar Rose reflects on the gender and power dynamics of society shaping women's life, emphasizing beauty over individuality. Let Briar Rose be a reminder to challenge the conventions and critique the current societal standards on women.